Good morning. Good morning. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Good morning. We will start with a nigun, so sing along if you're feeling like it, or if you don't feel like it and you think maybe it'll make you feel like it, try it. It's all good. So, and of course, you know the words. Rabbi Ted taught them to me. It took a while, but I learned them. It goes, yai dai da dai dai da dai, yai dai da dai dai da dai, yai dai da dai dai. Da 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 da, yai da 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 da. There we go. Yai da 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 da, Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai da dai dai da dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai dai da dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai dai da dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai dai da dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai.
You know, there are times, thank you, Steve.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
You know, there are just times when I wonder about just sitting with a nigun and just sitting with it and letting the mind kind of go through all its gyrations, you know, like asking how long are we going to be doing it, and you know, will this ever end, and what's this supposed to be, and wait a minute, I didn't come here just to engage in a chant with Yai Didai, and then just offering the mind opportunity to just let go into it. You know, to just notice all the judgments that would arise, and just go, you know, all that's happening right now is Yai Didai. All that's happening right now is a nigun. All that's happening right now is this melody. And what if one just allowed that to be, and allowed that to just kind of provide the mind something to do while something more profound awakens? And just wonder about the moments of that awakening. You know, that, I suppose it gets translated as, oh, that. Oh, this. Oh. At any rate, I'd like to welcome those of you who are joining us on this platform and this streaming presentation. We are unable to actually see you, and I'm actually unable to know how many people are actually there. I feel sometimes like I used to feel when during the year that I did a weekly radio show, Interfaith Talk Radio, with Imam Jamal Rahman and Pastor Don McKenzie was a while ago. And one never knew how many people were listening. 23 people watching. Well, welcome. Welcome. At the radio show, we never got such statistics popping up on a screen. Any rate, welcome. And I was just thinking about a February spiritual Saturday and remembering that it's about a year ago that we really became aware of the unfolding nature of the pandemic. It's about a year ago that we started entering into a different life. And I remember at the time, some of us saw what was happening far more clearly than others. The remarkable woman teacher that I've been doing teaching with, Tova Zev, she actually saw it quicker than I did. And then I saw it quicker than many. And I just remember the early days when I was declining in-person speaking and having people get upset that I would do such a thing. And then imagining that, well, it was going to last maybe for 3 months. It was going to peak somewhere in April, and then we would be done. And here we are, and it's a year and still counting. Our lives have changed. In a lot of ways, the world has changed. For some of us, it has really supported a focus on going inward, a focus on taking the spiritual process more seriously. Certainly that one of the consequences was the Awakening in Place program that Tova and I began last spring. You know, even spiritual Saturdays, to translate from meeting embodied in person to meeting inspirited at a distance, and discovering through this process actually a remarkable ability, a remarkable capacity, a remarkable possibility of experiencing a connection that is not defined simply by physical proximity. And even appreciating on the level of consciousness, the way in which the personal, physical embodiment sometimes inhibits the capacity for us to remember and to relate to one another on a far deeper level. To know that the consciousness that's flowing through my eyes and the consciousness that's flowing through your eyes is the same consciousness. To know that the one awakening within you is the same one awakening within me. There is only one. And perhaps to utilize this medium to help us remember. To utilize this time of pandemic to help us awaken. That we might live differently, not only in these moments, but in all the moments to come. So it's a strange anniversary. Many of us know those who have become ill and know those who have lost their lives. Many of us deal with our own fears of our own vulnerabilities. Many of us are still dealing with a kind of isolation, which is often extremely painful. And I think all of us have the opportunity to appreciate the gifts, perhaps hidden, perhaps revealed, and the ways our lives are different right now. I asked Steve to share his song called Try Another Day. And I'd like to continue with that, Steve.
Great. Thanks, Rabbi Ted. I wrote this as a love song for my sweetheart and for my son who was having a challenge, and my relationship with my son. And it started to spread out, and it's called Try Another Day, because whether it's the next day or the next mile in the marathon that you're running, or the next moment to see that same spirit in the other's eyes, whatever it is, I think that's what this song speaks to me about. Hopefully you too. We've battled way too long, struggled through some nights, worrying about who's wrong, possessed with being right, dreaming we'd hang on to memories fading fast. Gravity's so strong, it keeps us in the past. Let's try another day. Perhaps tomorrow's light will wash these tears away and bring love back inside. Let's break out from this hole before they ever list our names, before a tragedy unfolds. Let's try another day. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, and I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, and I love you. Though I know there's fear, I pray with heart in hands. The only thing that's clear, it's time we make this stand. Let's try another day with perhaps a little space where love can find its way and fill our hearts with grace, respecting each one's soul. We just might find a way before another hurt unfolds. Let's try another day. Let's try. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, and I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, and I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, and I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, and I love you.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh, you're welcome.
I love the way that you brought in the words of the Ho'oponopono into that song. So many of us actually, what?
That was a little bit of an afterthought. I wrote the song a few years ago, and then it just seemed like it fit really well. I was playing it at home a couple months ago, and I'm like, oh man, that's it starts to create a sense, maybe even of more hope, you know.
Well, I really appreciate it, and I'm just aware of all the vibrations that we offer to the sea, the ocean of consciousness that is shared, and how often we, without actually taking responsibility, flood the field of consciousness with anger and upset and fear. And then we wonder how come there's so much anger that keeps arising, and how much, and all the fear that's arising. It's really kind of remarkable, you know, and to allow ourselves to take responsibility and just awaken to, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you, and I love you. Opening to love and joy and peace, and fueling the field with that which is a vibration supporting well-being, supporting joy. I think in my tradition, what we are offered to help us remember to flow that kind of energy into the field of consciousness, it's called Shabbat, the Sabbath. A Shabbat is a weekly reminder to celebrate creation, the creation that's been during the whole week. That, like, if we could truly celebrate what is, we allow ourselves to be in an energy to move beyond. And when we are resisting what is, when we are complaining about what is, when we are trying to change what is, we keep ourselves stuck in it. For our fragile ego, for our fragile sense of separate self, it is such a conundrum, because the ego mind believes the exact opposite. It's like, if I don't fight against what's happening, if I don't resist what's happening, it'll just continue and get worse. And lo and behold, when we fight against it, it gets worse. And to transcend it means to transcend it, to respond on a level that is higher than the level of the problem. And we flow into that level through acceptance. We flow to that level through blessing. We flow to that level through acknowledging and allowing. So every Shabbat, it's like the culmination of a week of creation. It's the culmination as well of a week of Torah, remembering that in its narrow sense, Torah, which is a Hebrew word that means teaching, Torah is, in its narrow sense, the first 5 books of the Tanakh, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. And they are divided into parshiot, into portions. Originally, the chapters and verse numberings were not part of the Hebrew tradition. They were actually inserted by the church. We knew Torah as the sections, and each section was assigned to a week of the year, so that every year we read through the entire text, probing the depths of a spiritual literature, which essentially just reflects the nature of the spiritual beings through whom that literature flowed. Beings who sometimes closed, sometimes open, sometimes more closed, sometimes more open. But when those beings opened, what flowed through was universal. And when those beings, like us, when we close, what flows through is particular, separate, often contradictory. The Torah portion that culminates on this Shabbat is from the book of Shmot, from the book of Exodus. It's called Terumah. It's largely, it largely involves the materials that needed to be gathered to construct the wilderness sanctuary, the Mishkan, place of holiness, place of indwelling in the wilderness. And there's a remarkable verse toward the beginning of the parasha that says, "Va'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham." Let them make for me a sanctuary, a mikdash, a place of kadosh, kedusha, a place of holiness, a place of uniqueness, a place of sacredness. Va'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham, and that I might dwell, b'tocham, that I might dwell in their midst. Let them make for me a sacred place, that I might dwell in their midst. It's really a remarkable verse because we know that in that ancient time, that was the function of the sanctuary. That was the function of the wilderness Mishkan, the wilderness Mikdash. It was a place of indwelling. Mikdash is a place of holiness, place of kadosh. Mishkan, Khan, which is another name of that sanctuary, comes from the Hebrew word shachan, which means to dwell, to indwell. It's the same word as Shekhinah, the indwelling presence, the indwelling universal presence. So let them make for me a sanctuary that I might dwell in their midst. And it raises a question. What actually is needed for that presence, for that being to dwell in our midst? Obviously, in an ancient time, it was seen as a function of an external sanctuary. It was like trying to communicate something on a physical level that actually transcends a physical level. And I was thinking this year as I read this verse, that Shabbat is actually itself a mikdash. V'asuli mikdash. Let them make for me a sanctuary. Let them make for me a holy place. V'shachanti b'tocham. And they will find my presence in their midst. Shabbat is like one might say a portable sanctuary, a portable sacred reality. It's bigger than us, yet it also is us. And it is the indwelling awareness, the indwelling consciousness, the indwelling fullness of that presence. Shabbat offers us the opportunity to celebrate that one we are, to celebrate the fullness of the being with which we are gifted and with which we are also challenged to get out of our own way so that we might flow the fullness of that presence into our world with vibrations of greater wholeness, of greater peace, of greater joy, of greater healing, of greater well-being. Va'asuli mikdash, let them make for me a holy place, a sanctuary, b'shachanti, where they will find me, b'tocham, dwelling in their midst. At this moment, allow the Shabbat, right now, right here, to be that mikdash, to be that mishkan, that place of indwelling. And join us as we sing Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day, the wholeness and the completeness of Shabbat.
Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom.
We could just feel the embrace. I wonder if we just could feel the embrace of Shabbat. You know, as if that consciousness is just opening up within us. It's interesting. I put my hands up as if it's opening up here. But the consciousness doesn't have a location like that. The consciousness is bigger than a particular location. Like we dwell in the midst of that consciousness, and that consciousness dwells in the midst of us. It is, in fact, the essential mystery, and it is, in fact, the essential secret. I wanted to talk about the Zohar, and I wanted to talk about a teaching from the Zohar that is contained in the Zohar's commentary on the Torah portion of this week. Zohar itself, the word, means effulgence. I remember when I was in seminary, which is a long time ago, and there's most of those days that I don't remember. But I remember when I was struggling in the early years with Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, having trouble with the root of the word Zohar that appeared in the Hebrew Bible, and finally finding it in the lexicon. The reason why it was difficult to find is that the lexicon deals with the root of words rather than with individual grammatical forms in which it appears. And sometimes before you really know how Hebrew grammar works, you can't tell which letters are the root and which letters are not the root. So it actually often is, I remember it being tremendously frustrating to try to find the definition that fit. And I remember finally finding the root of Zahar, and it said effulgence, and I didn't know what that meant. Which was like somehow this insult. Effulgence means, probably everybody else knows this, but effulgence means a radiant brightness, a full brightness. And the term, the naming the book, the Zohar, is a way of ascribing that depth of brightness, that depth of illumination to a text, which is always a paradox, because a text is made up, obviously, of words. And there's no way that words can adequately express that which is by definition beyond words. And there's a terrible problem thinking that we can express that which is beyond words with words, because we confuse the reality with the cognitive grasp of words. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the specific secret that the Zohar references in this particular commentary. Zohar is really a series of books that appeared in the 13th century. The story is that they were written down by Moses de Leon, but ascribed to a 2nd century teacher named Shimon Bar Yochai, and written in a kind of Aramaic, mostly, that was more a language of the early centuries than it was of the 13th century. But because it was ascribed to a 2nd century teacher, but written down in the 13th century, scholars referred to it as pseudepigrapha. Pseudepigrapha, you probably might guess, means fake writing, namely forgery. So they saw that Moses de Leon was just making it up and telling a story about it that wasn't true. There are others who would look at it and say, that's a description of a channeled work. I don't know. What I do know is that the kind of wisdom the Zohar is attempting to express, sometimes more clearly than others, sometimes more adequately than others, the wisdom that the Zohar is trying to express is a universal, timeless wisdom that probably predates not only Moses de Leon in the 13th century, but Shimon Bar Yochai in the 2nd century. The kind of wisdom that attempts to be revealed in sometimes poetic, sometimes philosophic, sometimes more fantasy images through the Zohar is a universal awakening. And there are so many words in Zohar. There's so many words in spiritual literature that try to communicate what can't be communicated. It is just a favorite realization that mystics are often the people who say that what I want to communicate can't be communicated in words, and then mystics have a tendency to write more words than anybody else. And of course, there's a reason for that. And that reason is that what the mystic perceives, what the mystic realizes is experienced as so important and so critical and so crucial for the evolution of humankind that attempt after attempt needs to be made to help people wake up. Attempt after attempt has to be made to help the one communicating the urge to wake up to remain awake, to be awake herself, himself. So the Zohar commenting, and again, this is a translation, this is not the ancient Aramaic. So it's like not only do we have to plow through words, but we have to appreciate that we're dealing with layers. In this particular case, the reference is going to be to specific words in Torah, Hebrew. So it has a grounding that has been shared by, like whenever, whether this originated in the 2nd century, whether it originated prior to that, whether it originated in this form in the 13th century, it is talking about a text that actually is our text, and it's the same text that has been read for thousands of years. So the Zohar in this commentary starts with a story. It says, when the Israelites came out of Egypt, at first they knew nothing of the true meaning of faith in the Holy One. Because they were in captivity in Egypt, they had worshipped foreign gods and forgotten the essentials of the faith, that legacy which the 12 tribes had received from Father Jacob. You know, it's the essence of enslavement. Enslavement has a reference to an external condition, which is often extraordinarily painful and damaging. And enslavement has an internal correlate where we become enslaved to our fears and to our belief in our separateness. So when Moses came, he had to teach them that in the universe there is a supreme God. And then the text goes on. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but by and by the Torah was given to them, and gradually the people learned the ways of the Holy One, until eventually they reached the point when the words were said to them. Moses, in effect, said, till now I had to teach you as little children are taught. But now you have been shown to know, and here I'm quoting, and you have learned by now to know and penetrate into the mystery of the faith, namely this, that the eternal is God. Now, Cameron, I'd appreciate it if you'd put up the slide, because I want to reference the 2 words in Hebrew. I don't know what I'd do if Cameron wasn't listening, so thank you. The words are at the top right, and the English, oh wow, great. Now they're at the top. The Hebrew, reading from right to left. Remember that Hebrew is read from right to left, as opposed to English being read from left to right. So the word on the right is the 4-letter name that can't be pronounced. Actually not quite true, that is not pronounced. And the next word is Elohim. So the English transliterations are underneath the actual Hebrew word they are transliterating. Yud He Vav He used to be spoken. There's no question about it. There's a discussion of how it was pronounced. I, of course, and I'm sure I'm not alone, I have a strong suspicion about the actual pronunciation. And I am convinced absolutely that the common ways that people have thought the 4 letters were pronounced, namely Jehovah or Yehovah or Yahweh or Yahweh, I'm absolutely convinced that neither of those are actually reflective of the way those letters and that name was pronounced. But even if I was absolutely sure that I knew how the word was pronounced, I would not pronounce it, because at a certain point in the development of human consciousness, we became aware that if we are describing that which has no boundaries, that which has no limits, that which is greater than any notion we have of infinity or eternality, because our infinity and eternality are always kind of more. They're not all. But the letters Yod He Vav He, in English YHVH, Yod He Vav He, are pointing toward that which is without limit, that which is all. And were we to pronounce it, like every word, we would be drawing a circle around that which we are pronouncing and saying everything within that circle fits that name, outside does not, and there is no boundary. So somewhere in the 2nd century, before the Common Era, the decision was made no longer to pronounce that name. Traditionally, a whole other word got replaced. When we came upon those letters, we, instead of reading those letters, we learned to read a word, Adonai. Adonai is actually a Hebrew word that means Lord. And one of the terrible things is that in most translations of the text, the word that gets translated is not Yud He Vav He, which would be translated the eternal or the absolute or the all or presence with a capital P or being with a capital B. What gets translated is Adonai, Lord, which is terribly unfortunate. Terribly unfortunate. First of all, Adonai is masculine, and Yod He Vav He is everything. It's not he any more than it's she. It's all. So it's become my preference often to, instead of using the word Adonai, to use the first two letters of Yod He Vav He, the Yod He, which the pronunciation we're actually given. It does appear in Torah and in the Hebrew Bible, Yah. To use that and just feel it open to that which has no limit. Yah, Yah. So Yud He Vav He, and then the second word is Elohim. Elohim is a fascinating word because it is a plural noun of the singular verb Eloah, which is translated God. So one would expect Elohim to be translated gods. But everywhere it appears, it is translated as if it were a singular. So what we have here in the basic text is a teaching that the one, Yud He Vav He, manifests as apparently as the many, but it's all one. So I'll do this again. You have learned by now to know and penetrate into the mystery of the faith, namely that Yud He Vav He is God, which is no small matter. And then the Zohar continues, the whole mystery of the faith depends upon this. From this comes the knowledge of the mystery of mysteries, the secret of secrets. Yud He Vav He, Elohim, is a full name, and the whole is one. Now, I will be returning to this in a few moments, but I would like to invite us to sing the words that follow. Yahu ha Elohim. Hu is just meaning it is. Yah is ha Elohim. And this happens to be the way it's stated in a biblical verse. This is from the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy. Ata hareta lada'at ki yud he vav he hu ha Elohim ein od milvado. It has been shown to you that you might know on the deepest level of your being that Yud He Vav He, Hu Ha Elohim, that Yud He Vav He is Elohim. Ein od milvado. It used to be translated, there is no other, but we realize, at least seems to me, that the Hebrew means there's nothing else. You have been shown to know within the essential nature of your very being that Yud He Vav He is Elohim. Ein od milvado. There's nothing else going on. So Yahu ha Elohim.
Yahu ha Elohim, Yahu ha Elohim, ha Elohim, ha Elohim, Hu Yah, Yahuwah Elohim, Yahuwah Elohim, Ha Elohim, Ha Elohim, Yahuwah Elohim, Yahuwah Elohim, Ha Elohim, Ha Elohim,
Thank you, Steve. I do hope that those of you joining us risked singing along, just allowing these words and allowing the sweet melody to be part of your being. The Zohar continues. Saying the only aim and object of the Holy One in sending human beings into this world is that human beings might know and understand that Yud-He Vav-He, that Yah, is Elohim. This is the sum of the whole mystery of the faith, of the whole Torah, of all that is above and below, of the written and oral Torah all together, forming one unity. There is a large tradition of the written Torah, obviously, but oral Torah is much larger, encompassing finally, when it gets written down over the centuries, far greater literature than that which traditionally started as being written. And what the Zohar says is that the written Torah, that is a reflection of the Yod-He Vav-He. That is a reflection of Yah. And the oral Torah is the particularization of that that is reflective of Elohim. That the above, the Zohar goes on, in the Torah we find therefore the synthesis of the above and the below, heaven and earth. For the one name, Yud-He Vav-He, Yah, is above, while the other, Elohim, is below, one indicating the higher world and the other the lower. Therefore, you have been shown to know that Yod-He Vav-He, that Yah is Elohim. This is the essence of all things, and it is necessary that a person should perceive it in this world. Now, the interesting thing about this, the interesting thing about this world is this secret is not something that we're hearing for the first time. The one manifests as the many. It is a theme to which I return time and time again. I don't think this is a teaching that is radically different from teachings that you've heard me express in the past. But what I wanted to share was the way the Zohar, this incredible text of the spiritual nature of Torah, identifies this particular verse, Yud-He Vav-He, Hu Ha-Elohim. Yud-He Vav-He is Elohim. The one manifests as the many, and they are both one. Just saying, you've heard this before. We have been saying this, we have been writing this, we have been singing this for thousands of years. And we're not alone. I mean, we sing it in Hebrew. Other people sing it in the language of their tradition. All authentic spiritual traditions are essentially saying it's all one. And yet, we live with the separateness, the conflict, the terrible ego battles, causing harm and pain to ourselves and to others, because we just don't seem to really get it. We look at others from the shell of our own separateness, and we experience their shells of separateness. And we strive to awaken to something behind that shell, before that shell. We strive to find ways of engaging in thinning the walls of the shell in which we tend to clothe ourselves as we walk in the world. Yahu ha-Elohim. Yahu ha-Elohim. It's a mantra. It's a mantra. And it's inviting us to open to spaces of realization that words cannot reach. Oh, it gets translated back into words, but I suppose the words that reach there for me are words like, wow, oh, ah. Sometimes they're words like, Sometimes they're words like, ah, what a relief. What a relief. What an absolute relief to awaken to the reality that I'm not at the mercy of this separate self. That's not the true nature of my being. That I am always here. I am not vulnerable in the way this particular body is vulnerable. I'm not vulnerable. I'm not limited in the way this particular lifetime is limited. And I need to provide a focus that helps me remember. Remember that there is no other. There is no other.
Often we're reminded so much darkness before the dawn. Thank God my soul's not blinded, that we're all expressions of the loving one, and that there is no other, just the one. There is no other, only the one. And now I'm digging down through layers. We've all got that spark inside, and when my candle's just a flicker, let my oneness find me where the love resides, where there is no other, just the one. only the one. Ooh, only the one. When my fear fogs my eyes and my tears they only burn, I pray for memory from the other side, where the brilliant light of love returns and where there is no other. Though we are sisters and brothers, there is no other, just the one. There is no other. We could be fighters or lovers. There is no other, only the one. Because I am, oh I am, let me remember that I am. Because I am, yes I am, let me remember that I am, that I am, that I am. Oh, there is no other. There is no other. There is no other. Only the one. Only the one. There is no other. We are the one.
It's true. You know, it just confounds our senses, because our senses keep telling us there are plenty of others. Our senses keep telling us that everything is separate. And our senses have to tell us that because that's how we maneuver in this physical reality. But our senses are actually not conveying to us the actual reality of what's happening here. And we get fooled. We are individual biological receptacles of a flow of universal consciousness that awakens through us, as us, and endures. It was before us, it is with us, it is after us, it is bigger than us, and it is us. Language is simply not adequate. Simply not adequate to go, ah, I see that in you. Ah, there I am over there. Here I am over here. How do we celebrate? How do we celebrate that? How do we remember that? So, Cameron, the words that I'd invite are the words of the Shema, which are at the bottom of the. Oh, good. Thank you. I've talked about this many times. The phrase, the 6 words called the Shema, are the essential universal mantra of Hebrew tradition. Shema Yisrael, Yah, at least normally people say Adonai Eloheinu. We're going to use Yah Eloheinu, Yah Echad. Listen, you who yearn for God. This is Yisrael, normally translated God endures, God persists, or one who wrestles with God, one who strives for God. It's actually Tova who translates all who yearn for God, all who yearn to awaken. And I love that sense of translation of Yisrael. The use of the word is way before there was any kind of country. Israel was the name of a person, but the word contained meaning in itself. Listen, you who strive for God, the eternal, Yah, expresses through each one of us as Eloheinu, our God. God is Elohim. Eloheinu is possessive, our God. The universal is right here. It is ours. It is me. It is I. And then Yud He Vav He, or Yah Echad. It's one. Everything is one. It looks like more than one. It looks like heaven and earth. It looks like inside and outside. It looks like masculine and feminine. It looks like up and down. It looks like here and there. And it's all one. Absolutely interconnected. And if you notice in the Hebrew, remembering that the Hebrew is read from right to left, the last letter of the first word and the last letter of the last word in the phrase are written larger than any of the other letters, and they appear in that form in every Torah scroll. A Torah scroll is always hand-lettered, always copied from another to make sure that everything is accurate. This is the only verse in Torah that is set aside that way. One might say, in modern terms, it's the only verse that's in bold, or it's only the verse that's in italic, or it's whatever it is. It was a way of marking this as a central verse. And the last letter of the first word is called ayin, and the last letter of the last word is daled, and ayin and daled. And you could see in the English, Shema Yisrael, I've tried to indicate the A is larger and the D of Echad is larger. And Aid, which is a Hebrew word comprised of the ayin and the daled, those two larger letters in the Shema phrase, Aid means witness. And it's like, it's not enough to simply recite this. It's not enough simply to meditate on this. It's not enough simply to know this. It's not enough to simply proclaim this. One has to witness this, and witness this through the way one is in the world. Witness this in the way we are, in the way we act, in the way we share. Listen, as if all the time we are reminding ourselves to listen. Listen, we are yearning. We are yearning to awaken to the fullness of being. We are yearning to awaken to the fullness of our being. And the fullness of our being is simply a reflection of Yah Eloheinu. Yah, the eternal being, the eternal consciousness awakens within each one of us as the God. Yud He Vav He, Yah is one. There's only one. That's all there is. That's all that is. Because Yah is isness. Yah is being. There's nothing that is not Yah. So we're going to sing together the Shema, and just for a few moments to allow the melody to carry us into silence, into a brief meditation.
Shema Yisrael, Yah Eloheinu, Yah Echad. 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 Shema Yisrael, Ya Eloheinu, Ya 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 Echad.
If you feel comfortable wherever you are, I invite you to kind of settle back and let your eyes close. Whether the words are familiar to you or not, if they're not familiar, just take the first word, Shema. Shema. And imagine it just reverberating in your consciousness. Shema. Listen, listen, listen. And if you're familiar with the words, just let them so gently unfold, repeat. Shema Yisrael. Oh, listen. I am the one who yearns to know. I am the one who yearns for God. I am the one who yearns to remember. Yah Eloheinu. Oh, Yah awakens through me. Yah Echad. There's only one being. Breathing Yah. Heart beating Yah. Vibrating Yah. Remembering Yah. Listen. Listen. Let the walls of separateness fade and thin. Let the veils of concern and fear and distrust thin and fade. No denial, simply remembering. Remembering that which is always. Awakening as us. That awareness, that awakeness, that consciousness that always knows I am aware. I am aware. The awareness I am holds everything else. The awareness I am holds all thoughts, all feelings, all sensations. The awareness, the consciousness I am holds all experiences. The awareness I am touches this place through me. And perhaps in this moment, offering oneself as sanctuary. Live through me. Express through me. Celebrate through me. Love through me. Let this vehicle honor the one I am. Shema Yisrael, Yah Eloheinu, Yah Echad, Shema. Listen, remember, celebrate, and express the one I am. Listen. I encourage you to take moments during your day to give yourself time to remember, time to listen, time to celebrate the one you are. For now, take a gentle breath, let the eyes open. With such gratitude for being able to spend this time together. Perhaps some of you will be watching this at another time. I hope all that we've shared will help you listen, will help you remember, will help you celebrate and help you express the one you are. I do want to remind you of that which I normally forget to remind you of, and that is that we really welcome your donations. It allows us to continue our program, and it allows me to feel somehow legitimate that what Steve and I have been offering is of value to you. It's just a privilege for us. I'm speaking for you, Steve, but it's really a great value. And we are grateful to be able to share this with you on the third Saturday morning of every month. I'm so grateful to Unity in Lynnwood for supporting this program. So, celebrating this anniversary of pandemic, moving into a world hopefully of greater healing, of greater wholeness, moving into a world of greater hope and greater possibility. May we learn to celebrate more fully the one I am, we are. To utilize words of holiness to reach beyond the words. To know Shabbat as a sanctuary, and to know each and every one of us as a mishkan, a place for the indwelling of the one presence. we'll conclude with the nigun with which we began. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Cameron, behind the
Thanks, Cameron.
scene, for allowing us to express clearly and confidently. And thank you to each and every one of you who has joined with us. We are grateful.
We're grateful, yeah. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful month. Find ways to celebrate yourselves and each other. Shabbat Shalom.